Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwinny Poo. In this episode 543, I am joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPan89 on Twitter. Stacy, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. Sunny day in Seattle in November, so there are very few of those. So.
I will take your word for it. I've never been to Seattle in November, so
You got the look like you have before. So
that's it's just natural aging going on here.
Well, you've never been, or
I've been to Seattle, just not. I've been to Seattle not in November. I've gone in the spring. I've only been once. I went in May one time. But I'll make a note to myself not to go in November. Okay, we will discuss our travel plans later. But we're going to talk about the Knicks. We have a lot to get through. A lot has happened since we last talked. We'll talk about all of it, and it'll be fun. Before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has a YouTube channel where, if you're watching right now and you have not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.thestrict.land. There's a link that'll take you to our merchandise store. All kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that hosts every Friday with the Prez. You also get access to Takes from Memphis Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Dog, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord with the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, the pod that I host with YC, where we rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to one of our premium articles by our staff, and you get access to Strickland NFL, which you guessed it is a podcast about the NFL that is hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. It's $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on our pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without our sponsor, FanDuel. Thank you to FanDuel. They will take care of all of your betting desires, hopefully not needs. Okay, before we talk about the specifics of the game, I did want to talk about one thing that I think has look, a lot of things obviously come up through the course of the season. Things that are good, things that are bad, things that get people frustrated. One that has come up a lot over the last week, I feel like especially, is, and Mike Brown himself has kind of talked about it. He talked about it before the game yesterday. He said that he wanted to, use his bench more, use his depth more, give guys more of a chance. I would say he gave Yabusele more of a chance. I don't know about using his depth more beyond that. And like, I firmly believe that development is not as simple as throw guys out on the floor and let them play. I don't think that's how development works. I don't think that's the only way you can develop as a player. And I don't think that's the only way that a coaching staff can help a player develop. But what I will also say is, when the Knicks made the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, not just the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, right? But when they started kind of cashing in chips, right? So you traded quickly in RJ to get OG. Then you trade Grimes in a couple seconds to get Burks and Bogdanovich. Then you trade Bogdanovich and all your picks to get Bridges. And then you trade Randall, Dante, a pick to get Cat. You are now at this point of your team build. Yes, you're trying to contend. Yes, you are contending, I would say. But you're also, as we know, in this complicated cap world that the NBA exists in now, you're up against the second apron. So you have all these financial restrictions. And we also know that kind of the value of each dollar in the NBA that you commit on the cap has never been more important. And so once you made all those moves, it became very important, necessary even, let's say, to find value on the margins. And some of that they've done very well. I mean, we will talk about Landry Shamet for sure, but you talk about a guy that you got on a veterans minimum deal right now playing the way he is, that's finding value. But another part of it is you need to find sustainable solutions. things that are not year to year you're chasing after something. And the best form of that, obviously, is developing players that you've drafted. And I understand that it's very possible and maybe even likely that players they drafted in the 2024 draft, like Pacome Dadier, like Tyler Kolek, like Ariel Hukporti, maybe they're not good enough. Maybe they're never going to be good enough no matter how much you devote towards them in terms of development, resources, time on the court, whatever. They also took, Mohamed Diawara this past year in the draft. Now, he's kind of the newest fixation, I guess, fascination for fans of this guy needs to play. We need to get him on the court. We need to give him chances. And, look, if these players, the four that I just named, if these guys are ultimately not quality NBA players or quality rotation players, at least guys that can give you viable minutes in the regular season off the bench, that is ultimately on the front office. More than anybody else, that will be on the front office. But I think what is the purview of the coach is to find out what he has in these players within reason. So when I say within reason, what I mean is I think most reasonable fans are not expecting. I wouldn't even think most reasonable fans last year would have expected any coach, let alone Tom Thibodeau, to come out and throw Dadier on the floor for 15 minutes a night, or Kolek for 20 minutes a night, or Hukporti for whatever it is. But you wanted to at least see the attempt being made, give these kids a chance, and let's see, look, maybe they're not going to be helping us in April or May or June, but can they help me on a back-to-back in November? Can they help me in a stretch of 4 games and 6 days in February? And that didn't happen last year. And one of the things that was cited by the front office, and maybe not cited by the front office is probably the wrong word to use, but some of the reporting that came out in the aftermath of Tom Thibodeau being fired effectively and Mike Brown being hired to replace him, and Mike Brown himself talked about this, and they hired they made a big deal about like the development staff that they were adding and hiring and things of that nature. One of the things was we have to be able to develop, the players we draft. We have to do a better job of that, so on and so forth. And thus far, through the first 14 games of this season, we have very limited proof of concept of whether that's happening. And if it is happening, how effectively it's happening. And I'm going to be completely honest. I don't really care about Tyler Kolek not getting minutes because while I kind of think he would be okay, like I don't think he's changing your fortune. I was thinking he can eat some minutes right now in the regular season. I'm not of the opinion that he's a total waste of space. But the Knicks are pretty well stocked at guard, right? You've got Jalen Brunson, you have Deuce McBride, you have Jordan Clarkson who's playing really well for them, Landry Shamit's playing well, Josh Hart, whatever position you want to call him, he's obviously going to contribute. Like they're not really desperately, I don't think that Tyler Kolek's him not playing to me is not a huge deal. Maybe it's a big deal in the sense of you committed, 3 second-round picks to move up to pick the kid, and gave him this 4-year contract, sure. But I mean, in the sense of, I don't think it's a big deal because I don't think that they're dying for minutes at guard or they're giving minutes away at the guard position that are being used unproductively. Pacome Dadier, Mike Brown has been very transparent, I think, in his comments when he's made them publicly that he personally thinks that Dadier needs to grow up a little bit. Not in the sense of he's an immature kid or anything like that, but I think understanding that this is a man's league and every rep counts. Every second you're out there counts. You have to play with a certain level of physicality and desire. And right now he doesn't think that he's doing that. So that's all fair to me. What's a little bit less certain for me is, to an extent, and a much lesser extent, Ariel Hukporti, who did get some opportunities at the start of the year, I would say did not necessarily acquit himself to the heights you maybe would like to see. But over what we've seen of him over 2 years, I would still say, like, I'm fairly intrigued. I think the size and the athleticism is worth giving an opportunity to more often than he has. Um, and yeah, so it is a little bit disappointing that he hasn't played more, but I'm even sympathetic to that because you obviously have Mitchell Robinson, you have Karl Anthony Towns going to play a lot of minutes at center. I think he is in the process of working Gershon Yabusele back in the rotation, and we know he's going to take some minutes in the front court, both at the 4 and the 5. So I'm a little bit. I can understand how that's happening. The Diawara thing to me is actually quite frustrating. Not in the sense of like I'm not sitting here. I think we also need to accept that if this was Tom Thibodeau, we would have an idea of if this guy hasn't played really at all in the first 14 games, he's probably not going to play. You know what I mean? Like that's just how Tibbs operated. I don't know that's the case with Mike Brown. Maybe that's true. Maybe he's going to operate in the same way. But I don't know that to be true. So setting that caveat aside, Mike Brown himself has talked about he wants to get Diawara more minutes. He started him the final preseason game of the final game of the preseason, and I don't know if you recall, but he basically said like he wanted to reward him for how he practiced effectively, which to me would indicate that he's practiced quite well, and not just practiced well, but practiced hard and done what the coaching staff has wanted to, and maybe even gone above and beyond, for all I know. And when we're at full strength, I think it's not as frustrating. It's not as I don't get why he's not getting an opportunity. You get it. It kind of makes sense why maybe it's hard to working him in. We're not at full strength, and very specifically, we're missing OG Anunoby, who is, I think you would agree, the Knicks' only established anyway true big wing. And the reason why, so he's out right now. Who knows when he'll be back? I think he'll probably be back around Christmas. Diawara is the only guy then that, by Mike Brown's own admission, has caught his eye to some level, and gives you a dose of not just size at that, on the wing, but also I think the type of physical tools that when you're playing this kind of gap scheme they are defensively, you really need. And yesterday he played 1 minute, I think 1.5 minutes, maybe something like that. In that 1 minute, he helped force a turnover on an inbounds play, basically forced a backcourt. He blocked a shot at the rim after, I think it was Brandon Williams, got a blow by. And unfortunately, the Knicks were not able to corral the defensive rebound. And, I think Dallas they grabbed it and they got fouled, went to the free throw line. DOR comes off the floor. That's it. That's all we saw. I find that disheartening because then after the game, I forgot what exactly Mike Brown said, but he basically said that like he wants to get Diawara more minutes because of, the stuff, the tools and the athleticism that they kind of need right now, especially with OG out. And I just wanted to bring all this up because I think there is a real conversation to be had here about not just the development of these players, but why I think it is actually really important that he give at least Diawara a shot because they do need to get contributions at these kind of from somewhere on the fringes of the roster. And they need very specifically another wing, another big wing. I mean, this is something we've talked about going back 2 years ago, let alone now. And, if you're not going to give him a chance in these games in November, and it's very possible Diawara comes in, and if you give him, let's say, I'm not asking for a lot. Let's say 4 or 5 minutes in each half, something like that. So 8 to 10 minutes a game. And let's say in those 8 to 10 minutes a game, he looks overwhelmed. The game's moving too fast for him. He's a foul machine. We know his 3-point shot is not where you really would want it to be. Maybe those things are a really big detriment, and he's just not ready for prime time yet. And so be it. now we kind of, you know that, right? You know that for sure as a coaching staff. You would know that. But right now, but like if he's good, right? Let's say he comes in those same minutes, those 4 to 5 minutes in each half, and he's actually good. He's contributing. He's making plays on the defensive end. He's helping you clean up on the defensive glass. He is at least keeping things ticking over offensively. Um, well, now it's like, okay, now I know that I can use this guy throughout the season. And maybe there will still be nights where you don't go to him. But then there can also be nights where it's like, hey, we're shorthanded because Hart's missing this game, or OG's out for a week, or whatever the case may be, or you need him situationally. You talk about like the end game situation last night. You know, I, in theory, Diawara in a situation where you're going to be switching everything 1 through 5 could be very useful. Um, but you won't know what you have until you give him a chance. And if you're not going to give him a chance in what are still, in November, lower leverage games, that's a little disappointing to me. And it was disappointing to me in Miami because I thought, again, in the 1 minute he had against Miami, I thought he looked pretty good. I thought he looked up to the task. He made a play defensively. Like, these are things that should earn you more time. And Mike Brown is saying that he wants to get him more time. And I would like him to follow through on that and not be, in some ways, I think Mike Brown's being a little bit of a coward in not putting him on the floor just a little bit more. Because I think he wants to kind of, he's still trying to develop the top 9 guys in his rotation and figure out how he wants to run everything on a night to night basis. And I understand all that. But OG is out. You do need a big wing. You need something on that wing with size and real capability. And I think he has the potential to be that, And again, like I can only speak for myself. I am not talking about throwing him out there for 30 minutes, but I would like to see him get a run of games where it's like, yeah, you're gonna get 4 or 5 minute stints each half, and let's see how that looks. Let's see how it looks, and we'll go from there. And let's see that for a couple of weeks. And now we actually can maybe extrapolate a little bit more positively, negatively, whatever, based on his play. But I just wanted to say that because I do think like this conversation about development and stuff like that, it's not about, at least for me, it is not about mindlessly throwing these young kids out there and acting like, this is still 2019 Knicks or something. Like, we understand this team is a contender, or everybody should understand this team is a contender, that they have expectations and goals that extend beyond, maybe making the playoffs or whatever. They have real goals. And I understand that to get to those real goals, it's more likely that players higher above him, with the more experienced players on the team, the core players, let's say, are more of a decisive factor towards that. But if you're trying to manage, the limitations of the second apron and having a pipeline of young talent that can come in and give you minutes and hopefully steadily increase in importance, and maybe then offer you opportunities to move off a veteran down the line or something in a trade that can address another need. These are things you need to do. And I think these are the things that organizationally they kind of hinted at when they moved on from Tom Thibodeau. So um, this is not me killing Mike Brown or calling him, calling for his head. But yeah, I would say like if I had a disappointment through the start of this season so far, that would probably be it. I think that there needs to be a little bit more time afforded to these younger kids anyway. And again, I want to be very specific with this. I mean, very specifically Diawara, and to a lesser extent Huckporty. Um, and for that to not have happened, despite the fact that the Knicks have actually dealt with a decent amount of, this guy's out, these two are out, okay, OG's out now, whatever. Yabu's working himself back into shape. Despite them kind of working through those things and maybe having that chance now to, hey, you know what, let's give this kid a shot tonight. That hasn't happened. I would say that is a little bit disappointing for me.
Yeah, the short rotation in general was disappointing. People mentioned we had the couple days off for rest. I think we are right now with OG missing. We're also missing some physicality, which I think DOR brings, and the ability to really impose. He's not going to be OG. Let's be real. And I think we're realizing now, right? Like, I didn't. I mean, did you think the offense was? Did you have a problem with the offensive process yesterday?
I did not.
Yeah, I thought they missed a lot of. Cat was missing open. Not just we can talk about the deep threes, but he was missing just open mid range shots. Brunson is in his. We've talked about this, right? It takes him until really January to be Brunson. He still gets a lot of good looks, so like it's not bad until then. But he doesn't turn into superstar Brunson usually for a couple months. The defense was more worrisome because it's not, Dallas is not known as a 3-point shooting team, but they're giving open looks to D'Lo and to Clay, who they're going to knock those down, right? And Christie. Like those guys, you can't be. It's one thing to say we're going to give Najee Marshall some space. He's not a high volume 3-point shooter. But it tells you how important, and that's why I think we've had this discussion where it's like Mitchell Robinson is more impactful, I think, overall. But if you look at the relative loss, it's easier to survive Mitchell Robinson being out than surviving OG being out on defense. And on offense, there's a case there too. Mitch gives you offense rebounding, but OG obviously spaces, can create his own shot a little bit. With Diawara, I think it seems like they're bringing him along slowly. I do worry a little bit about, what I've heard about what happened with Keon Ellis. It seems to be a persistent issue where they're still not giving him enough minutes. But we're seeing that we're seeing that he doesn't trust Deuce versus Shamet. I'm largely okay with that decision. I think you are probably too. One, Shamet has played extremely well. If we play a team like Cleveland, I wonder if Shamet can be quite as impactful as a point of attack defender, but he's good at getting skinny through screens. He is really good off ball. The effort doesn't wane. And he's a very, very smart off ball player. He is. I would like to have this conversation a little bit later on a different topic. Because I'm wondering if Shamet is just giving us what DiVincenzo was giving us before, because I think that's not a crazy thing to say after the last few games. But I think with Diawara, I'm encouraged because I think that it's 1 minute last game, a couple more minutes this game. I think they're building up to that. I think Brown is navigating this thing where our record isn't great. Detroit is great. We need to keep winning games. And he's still finding trust and knowledge about the roster. I don't know enough about his past rotations to know if he's going to be like that all the time or if he's going to continue to evolve. I wouldn't say I'm worried about it. I think I would agree with you that this is probably the one thing where I was like, he's also not actively detrimental in the same way. He might blow rotation. He might try to do too much on offense, but he's generally in the right spots. He's not going to be physically overwhelmed. I think that there was an opportunity probably to play him a lot more, and they didn't. And it's tough to find minutes. To your point, right? Hart has been shooting, I think, 48% from three over the last few games. Is he? I mean, he passed up one.
Is this who he is now?
No, I mean, it's also a product of passing up on. There was one in the first quarter where he was wide open.
Yeah,
and
above the break.
Yeah, but above the break, but still, he had 10 feet of space.
I mean, they weren't even closing to him. They were literally just standing there.
And he pump fakes on a non-closeout and drives and tries to bank it in. And I don't know if he was trying to bank it in, but it was a very ugly. His floater isn't bad, but it was not a good attempt.
Josh Hart floater or Jalen Brunson floater?
Right now, Like I said, Jalen Brunson floater is kind of more of an iffy proposition right now. But I think I'm encouraged with the fact that DOR is getting on the floor. Um, I'm encouraged by the fact that he's still playing Deuce quite a bit. He's trying different lineups, and it's tough. I mean, OG in many ways is a linchpin for this team. It creates a lot of issues. So I think that's a tough thing. He doesn't trust Dadier for whatever reason right now. I think,
and I'm almost okay with that because he was so transparent about it. Like he was transparent about it in preseason, and I think if you're transparent about it as a coach, then at least I'm like, okay, that's your evaluation is that Pacome Dadier is not ready for this yet. That is not his evaluation of Mohamed Diawara. That's what makes it frustrating. And that's not really his evaluation of Ariel Huckport either. He's talked about, he's like, he's so athletic, he's so fast, he's talked up Huckporty too. But the Diawara one especially is frustrating because you're like, well, you're telling me all these things that sound awesome about this guy and that you like about this guy, but then it comes game time and you're like, you put him in for a minute and then it's like, okay, that's enough. Come back out. It's like, I mean,
his minutes haven't been damaging, really, right? So,
right. The minute he played yesterday, he literally forced a turnover and blocked a shot. Like, seems pretty good.
Can I throw this at you? I think this is more of a common thing in football, but I wonder if DOR is just a better in-game player than a practice player.
I mean, maybe it's possible, but like again, Mike Brown himself seems to be like what he's shown in practice. So it can't just be that he's barely played him in games. So I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. I do want to get to this comment. Thank you for the super chat. This is from Jeffrey Glynn. Yabu looked better. I like his screening a lot. I did like the screening from Yabu. I thought that was very good. So I'm not, again, like I guess Yabu's emergence also kind of makes it, I don't know, to some degree, it can prove challenging that if you're still throwing 5 minutes for Diawara, but it doesn't seem that unworkable, honestly. Like it just felt like he's just not able to fully get to the point of trusting Diawara, and that is an issue for him.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it's partly just he's a new coach. He's trying to win games. But I would say that the fact that he's getting on right now early in the season as a rookie, to me, is like, I'm not worried long term. I think he'll get on the floor in the playoffs,
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's good to see Yabusele contribute. I think he's moving better. He looks more attuned right now defensively than he was earlier in the season when he felt like a step slow, both in terms of like just physically moving, but also just reading plays, understanding where to be. I thought he played quite well on the defensive end the last few games. If anything, I thought, it was weird to me how he was using the Miami game. I thought he definitely should have played a bit more then. The 3 ball right now, it feels like he's super aiming it, that he is not confident in that shot. He has this like almost the last 3 he took, he was wide open in the corner. It almost looked like he arched his back to the side before he shot it, and it just did not look like a comfortable shot. He was short as hell on it. So I don't know, that's a confidence thing. That's maybe that's still part of him getting his kind of legs under him, so that he can shoot with more confidence. But they really, really need that to come around for him, because if he can start hitting threes, there is a versatility to the player he is and what he provides. You kind of saw a glimpse of that last night when they played the lineup where it was like him, Cat, I believe Brunson, Clarkson, and Hart to close. It was it Hart? Maybe it's Deuce. I don't remember off the top of my head. Towards the end of the first half, And that lineup, or sorry, it was Bridges. That's what it was. It was Bridges was the fifth guy. It was a 5-out lineup. You could see the shots they were getting were easy. The defense held up. Granted, it's this version of the Mavericks, which is not a good offensive basketball team to say the least. So yeah, I don't know. I was encouraged by that stretch because I think the 5-out look is needed. And he is one that provides kind of a different. It's 5-out, but there's a size and a physicality when he can play the 4 next to a guy like Cat, that I think provides a different element than you get from some of their other 5-out looks. So it was good to see that, and hopefully we see more. And we have a game against Orlando, obviously on Saturday. I mean, that was a team that in the first matchup, quite frankly, Orlando, they got physical with the Knicks early. The refs let them play physical with the Knicks, and the Knicks did not handle it well. And you would like to think a player like Yabusele, given his size, that he can help in those type of physical matchups.
Yeah, and I think to your point, when you're missing OG, it's obviously not the same. He's not the same kind of defender, but Yabu does. I mean, we said this with Randall, right? Like you kind of feel him. He can he's going to put some pain into you, right? And he gives you that versatility, he gives you a little more playmaking. I've seen him be more comfortable, I think, with the ball. Like he just didn't know, it seemed earlier in the season, where to be, what to do. He was thinking a lot, right? I've seen that a lot less, right? Like you miss shots, it's fine, right? And to your point, maybe the aiming is part of that thinking, but at least the decision-making part of that seems to have been remedied. And this is a vet. Like we saw him in Philly last year. He's going to fit in. I think this isn't a guy who's has any major flaws. We know what his flaws on defense are, but it's not like Mikal Bridges last year where he went from being a sniper or a shooter in Phoenix really to being the guy in Brooklyn. So in Phoenix, he was on a winning team that made the finals. In Brooklyn, he's on a team that's not. And then he comes here and he has to learn how to play with Cat and Brunson, manage both, kind of scaling down a bit with being more of a 3-point shooter, with also sometimes being tasked with creation. You're seeing that in year 2, Bridges, I think, has taken off. I think the ramp up should be a lot less for Yabusele because his role just isn't as important. But he gives you that different look, and I think I'm still being maybe more optimistic than a lot of Knicks fans, but I'm just not concerned about him that much.
I'm with you. I'm not that concerned about him because I don't want to keep going back to the conditioning thing and him playing in the summer and then kind of probably taking time off and then coming in. That is what it is. He wasn't in shape to start the year. We don't need to, whatever the reasoning may be, that was the reality. He was not in shape to start the year. And while it may be frustrating for me at times that Mike Brown maybe has been weird with his minutes, I also think that when you do come in out of shape and you're not playing kind of hopefully or you're not playing at the level that was expected of you, probably by the front office when they signed you and likely by the coach as well, that, yeah, you might have to, it might take some time for him to trust you again. And also, like, I think there's also an element of, like, when you are out of shape, and let's be honest, like, let's be real. Yabusele's a big fucking guy. Okay. He's a big dude. And I could definitely see the medical staff, the training staff, or whatever being like, look, like, play this guy in short bursts. Don't play him too many minutes. That's how we manage this right now until we ramp up his conditioning. And that is challenging for a coach because you know what? It's not just him, right? He's having to deal with the same thing with Mitchell Robinson, which is why I don't understand why Mitchell Robinson is starting, because I think it just is making a lot of things more complicated than they need to be in terms of rotations. That's a separate issue. But yeah, I'm not worried about Yabusele really. Like, it would be nice if he would start making some threes more consistently. It'd be nice if he was shooting in confidence more consistently. But I think the decision making is getting cleaner offensively. The screening, as Jeff mentioned in his comment, that's certainly good to see. I think he is a good screener. I think he has good dribble handoff skills, which we know are important in this system. So I am cautious. I remain cautiously optimistic about Yabusele. I like what I've seen of him over the last week. It's getting better. We need more. I think we will get more as the season goes along. This is from Kenny Meir. He says Orlando's size really hurt the Knicks in the first matchup. They consistently were shooting over smaller defenders. It's a perfect matchup to throw Diawara on Franz for a few minutes. Yeah, and forget Franz, right? Because Franz is, however good you think Franz is very good, and he is kind of like their top gun, let's say. So maybe you don't feel comfortable throwing him, into the fire in that sense right now. I think that's reasonable. But you don't think Diawara could help out on a guy like Tristan da Silva, who's playing really well for the Magic and shooting a high clip from three? Like, there are guys that you can throw him in or throw him on in that matchup. And sure, if he gets stuck on Franz at a certain point, I wouldn't think that he'd be physically overwhelmed in that matchup. And that does matter. But yeah, I agree. Like, I think the Orlando matchup is one where, I mean, you even have some proof of concept of this going back to the 2023-24 season. Orlando was a team that gave us trouble that year. I think they went 3-1 on us in that season series. And in all those losses, it felt like that size on the wing was very tough for us to deal with on both ends. And then you get OG. And, OG actually plays the Orlando games last year. It doesn't feel as overwhelming. It doesn't feel as much of a size mismatch. And yeah, like I just this is like, if you're going to give him a chance, I really think you got to do it early in the season. And I really think this is a good matchup to try it out. Because if he's situational, right? Let's say like, oh, he's situated. Okay, this is the kind of situation you'd want to use him in then, against a team that has all these kind of big jumbo sized guys, and isn't necessarily the most dynamic offensive team in the league. Certainly not the most dynamic offensive team in the league. But obviously has this overwhelming amount of size really across the board. This is a matchup to give him a chance, an opportunity to see what he has. I would like to see it again. I would like to see it on Saturday. I wish we had seen it against Miami on Monday. I wish we had seen it last night. But, c'est la vie. It wasn't to be. But, Saturday is another day, and hopefully Mike Brown gives the kid a chance.
Yeah, I think that I mean, you're just gonna have to find these pockets of opportunity. He compromises the spacing, but I think part of it is if you have a stretch five, right? And this is something we don't have besides OG, right? We don't have the kind of guys like if we had a guy like Osar Thompson, we were talking about this in the Discord, right? Like I said a couple of weeks ago, only two guys would be rotation members. And remember, the Discord pushback from the Pistons would be rotation members. And remember, the Discord said, well, Osar probably would too. He's probably a better player than Hart. Well, having a guy like Cat makes playing a guy like Osar easier for us, actually, in many ways than for the Pistons, right? Unless they play him next to Stewart. Because now, if you have a non-shooter, but they're an insane defender, which Hart is not, which made that pairing a little bit worse, then you can play him there, right? There's not a whole lot of downside. That's what's a little bit frustrating. Like it'd be one thing if it was like, the guy constantly biffs, and maybe he's biffing. We've seen him for a minute at a time, right? So he's Missy Elliott right now, 1 minute man. So, if you're, but it has not looked at any point like he's overwhelmed. He's going to make mistakes, of course. He does remind me a little bit of Hukporti last year, where it was like, yeah, there'll be mistakes, but he generally knows what he's doing, and just the force there should give you some help. And Franz, you lay off the jumper, and there might be some nuance there that it's tough. Is he going to get his assignment on defensive rebounds? When he is a spacing issue, he's going to cut at the right time, right? Versus a guy like Hart who knows more intuitively how to cut, or Shamit. Those are. But I think for a few minutes a game, and because if you have that in your back pocket, you might have to throw someone at. You might want to throw him at Evan Mobley in the Eastern Conference Finals. You might want to throw him at Jalen Duren for a second, right? If Mitch is in foul trouble, you don't really want Cat having to help and keep Duren off the glass. You have a guy like Diawara there, right, to give you some extra physicality. You don't know what OG. We had really good health from OG last year. Now it's 2 weeks, but this should be baked in, right? Like, and the closest. Would you say the closest OG analog on this roster is Diawara? I'm not saying he's the same player, but the closest thing we have in terms of a physical presence is Diawara.
The most physical presence on defense?
Physically similar, right? Bridges is skinny. He's not OG. Bridges is not OG.
Yes,
He's
yes,
very
yes,
good player.
yes. Yes, 100%.
So I think Diawara. So if you want to keep playing some of that same way, and OG is going to miss time. He is an injury-prone guy. We were very lucky last year. I'll say it again. I think that's there's no downside to give him a few more minutes, especially if right now you're not exactly hitting your ceiling. I think what I would love is for the Knicks to build, and maybe this is what Brown is waiting for, like the Knicks actually the 3-pointers fucking fall for once at a high rate, and you're up 20-25, and then you're saying, okay, let's rest Hart for a bit, let's rest Shamit for a bit, let's see what this guy's got, right? And give him some minutes. That might be what they're waiting for. I think yesterday might have been, and maybe the last 2 games were both, these are worse teams than us. The Heat is one thing because they're, the Heat are weird. Maybe Brown expected that at some point we're just going to blow this game open with the Mavs, which it looked like at the beginning of the third quarter we were starting to do. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. And then we can just kind of give him some more minutes, right? But I really don't think there's much downside, and there's a huge amount of upside to giving him minutes, just in terms of how you want to play and what he can do for this roster. I mean, he allows you to play so many different ways. You can play next to Cat. I mean, I don't know how good of an offensive rebounder he is, but I'd be intrigued to see him next to Mitch if you can just pummel teams, especially if it's like Shamit, Deuce, and Brunson next to them. So you have 3 pretty high-quality shooters. One guy could bail you out of any spacing issues, and then you can pummel teams on the glass. I think there's an interesting number of possibilities there.
Yeah, look, I think we've talked a lot about maybe things that Mike Brown isn't doing that we would like to see more of. But one thing that he deserves a ton of credit for is the play of Landry Shamet. Obviously, Landry Shamet himself is responsible for how he's playing, but Shamet was a guy that at last year at various points was a DNP CD, was you're going to get 8 minutes a game. He was out of the rotation in the playoffs after the first couple of games. He was a fringe player at best coming into this season. Coming into training camp, we weren't even certain he was going to be on the roster, right? There was talk about, well, maybe Garrison Matthews is going to take his slot, or maybe, whatever may be the case. He's had to kind of earn his keep here in New York, and he's done it. And he's thriving right now for Mike Brown. I mean, he is maybe, if he's either the biggest or second biggest reason they beat Miami on Friday at the Garden. And he hit the 2 biggest shots of the fucking game last night. And I don't blame him for missing his free throws, because Clyde changed the shit out of him at MSG. Clyde, don't do that shit anymore. Sick of that. Don't do it. But he hit the 2 biggest shots of the game, and he got 2 huge. I mean, he had 2 really nice defensive stops late in the game. Obviously, the final play of the game, he draws an offensive foul, and it was an offensive foul, by the way. I know that there are Pistons fans on Twitter who are very, very mad that we beat them in the first round last
Bro,
year.
it looked like he was trying to grab Landry's ass. Do you see that shit? Like he was like reaching around, like
yeah, like I'd understand if it was Yabu, right?
well,
But
it's a bigger target. So
no, like yeah, it was an obvious offensive foul. I don't think there was any. It's only controversial because it was the call was made. If that was Cat, they would have anticipated the call 3 seconds before he did it and called the foul on him. But like, yeah, he's playing great, and if we're gonna be critical of Mike Brown for not trusting a guy like Diawara or giving him a chance, you have to give him credit for putting his trust in Landry Shamet and Landry Shamet for rewarding him, right? Landry Shamet is playing, I don't know, I don't want to say the best ball of his career because I think
can I bring up
that's
DiVincenzo? Can we bring up DiVincenzo as a comp right now for what he's doing?
I think you gotta see it play out a little bit more. DiVincenzo had a crazy year in New York. I mean, that was like a wild shooting year. But
he's giving you a lot of that, like the movement shooting,
no, I
the
agree.
ability to
and I'll
attack
say
inside
this,
the paint, the smart.
I'll say this. I'll say this. I think Shamet's a better defender than DiVincenzo.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Yeah,
I think he's flat out a better defender than DiVincenzo.
Help. He's also bigger too, right? I think he's got a longer wingspan.
Yeah, he's definitely a little bit bigger. I'm not sure about his wingspan, but DiVincenzo didn't have a great wingspan either, right? So who cares? And look, I promise you, this is not me trying to diminish what Dante did in New York. Obviously, he hit a massive shot to win us a playoff game. He played God knows how many minutes for the entire season, and like I said, he was like, I think he was like 15 threes per 100 possessions that year. He shot 40% or whatever the hell he was. Like he had an obscene shooting season, which is why I hesitate to say, Landry is giving you what DiVincenzo did. And also like DiVincenzo did it over 82 games. We have to see how Shamet kind of holds up. But you're not wrong in saying like the current level that he's giving you, it does feel a little bit like that. Maybe he's not doing it in all the same ways. Like he's not getting up the volume that Dante did from three. And quite honestly, he's never going to get up the volume Dante did from three because Dante's range and kind of how quick his trigger was just different. But I think Shamet has more. I feel more like he's not a dynamic creator, but I feel a little bit more comfortable with what Shamet's. Yeah, like I'm not worried. Like
we always had that one turnover game from Dante where he would, bringing the ball up, he tries to get it to Brunson, and in a full court press or whatever, he always had one dumb turnover game. So
Dante had a lot of like wild layup attempts and stuff like that. I don't think Shamet does that. I thought like the play where the first three he hits yesterday, I thought that was a really smart play by him actually because they're coming down in transition. It's like a 3-on-2, 3-on-1, but Hart passes Shamet the ball, I think too early. He does not get the defender to commit to him at all. So when Shamet catches it, he's kind of like going full tilt at the rim. And I believe it was D'Lo that was there. But like he could have taken a layup, but I didn't think he was in control. And I think he didn't think he was under control and he wasn't sure that he could get the angle. A lot of players in that position would still force it, right? They would just be like, let me just go up with this. And it's not an insane decision or necessarily a bad decision. But I thought it was the right decision for him to come down, swing it to Brunson, and he doesn't stop, right? Like he doesn't stop playing. He keeps going, right? He gets to the corner and he gets rewarded with the wide open three after Brunson kind of clears out and starts dribbling into the paint. But that's the biggest thing with him. That I think it's why Mike Brown likes him so much is so much of this offense is predicated on, like, yes, we talk about, he wants guys to shoot threes, but so much of it is predicated on cutting, understanding spacing, timing of cuts, all that type of stuff. And Shamet is as good as anybody on the team in understanding that. And like we just talked about, you combine that with the fact that he's a trustworthy decision maker. He's playing really well. And again, we spent the first 45 minutes of this talking about how, Mike Brown is committing crimes for not playing Muhammad Diawara, but we should you should give him credit where credit is deserved, and he absolutely deserves credit for putting his trust in Landry Shamet and being rewarded for it. And like the best example of this I can tell you is end of the game yesterday. Deuce hit 3 threes in the second half. He kind of caught fire, and they go into a timeout. I believe they were down 2 at that time. And the sub he makes is Shamet in for Deuce. And I was like, I did not like that sub. I thought it should have been, if you're going to bring Shamet in, I think I would have brought him in for Josh Hart. But whatever. He puts him in for Deuce. I didn't love that. But like, I think the first possession out, he forces a turnover. And he's playing hard, man. He's playing hard. And yes, there are going to be times that he gets overwhelmed defensively because he's not the biggest guy. He's not super tall or whatever. But he's playing hard. He's playing smart, and he battles. He battles. He's in the right position more than not. I just like the way he's playing. I like the way he's playing. I like the pace he's playing at, and yeah, I'm just very, very impressed by what he's giving us right now.
Yeah, I think we've wanted that kind of guy, right? Just a movement shooter, smart player, going to do his job, not a liability on defense. Again, I want to see Kenny guard Donovan Mitchell, the way a guy like Deuce can. What I'm interested in is, let me throw this back to you. He's a smart player. I've seen him kick out even off of some of these drives. Is it worth it to give him some pick and roll reps a couple times a game? That's kind of the next step, just to see what's there, right? Maybe it's just not something he's comfortable with. He's not a particularly dynamic ball handler, but he has gravity, right? So,
I am not sure. They're not even really running that many like pick and rolls to begin with. It doesn't feel like, or at least they're not coming down, okay, everybody space out and then running 1-5 pick and roll.
There's always window dressing,
doing a lot of that.
Shit like that.
Yeah, if they get to pick and rolls, it usually happens within the flow of the offense. It's like after you kind of run a DHO and then you come back around, set up the pick and rolls. Ken, maybe they make it more of a focus to put him in those positions within their offensive flow. Yeah, I think maybe. But I'm not sure that you want to necessarily do that. Now, it's worth mentioning, and even Mike Brown mentioned this, that Shamet played point guard in college. So he's not like incapable of running a pick and roll potentially. But it's probably something I'm not fully on board with. What I would say is maybe more interesting and less specific, but just more broadly speaking, is when Brunson's off the floor, we know that the Knicks don't really have another like point guard guy, like a true point guard or whatever. It might be worth considering, like, yesterday, I believe, Hart was the first sub in, if I remember correctly. I wonder if it's not a bad idea to get Shamet on the floor maybe a bit more in minutes without Brunson, because it is more of a timeshare in terms of who is creating and who's bringing the ball up the floor and initiating offense. And he might be able to help more with that when Brunson is off the floor. When Brunson's on and Mikal is on, really, you don't necessarily need to lean into what Shamet can do with the ball. But maybe when one of those guys is off, very specifically Brunson for sure, maybe that's when, if Shamet's on the floor, then maybe you can make it a little bit more of a priority to tap into that.
Yeah, I just think, especially early in the season, you just want to explore, you want to leave no stone unturned. But, Shamet's been a revelation. If we're talking about things that I've liked that Brown has done, I think the ball movement is a lot better. They're getting up lots of threes. It's made them inherently more high variance, for better and for worse. I think, for some of these teams, high variance can be a good thing, especially when you don't have a clear-cut talent advantage. Um, we should. So yesterday, I think, was a very ugly win for the Knicks. I don't know how much Cooper Flag being out hurts them. I think there's an argument that if you're taking out a rookie who's demanding a lot of touches, he's a good defender. I don't know how much that changes things for them. But obviously not a very good team. I thought the defense was more alarming than the offense, but I also think that with OG out, you just have to expect that this team is like the 20th best offensive team in the league, or defensive team. Sorry. I think they're not going to be a good defensive team without OG. They can be an average team without Mitch, but even with Mitch, and I don't think Mitch looked great yesterday. It's not, it's not going to. So they found a way to win. They missed a lot of open threes, but let's talk about this. How do you think Cat needs to rein it in a bit from three on some of those transition attempts and deep, 27, 28-foot looks?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you think Cat needs to rein it in a bit on some of those deep 28, 30-foot looks that he's been taking, especially early in the shot clock?
I would say I'm a little bit I'm not sure. It's probably the best way. I don't know. I think there are ones that are fine and there are ones that are not. And I can't quite put my finger on what the difference is. Like, he had one yesterday. He comes down, shoots a pretty quick over Lively, and it rimmed in and out. Like, I mean, it literally was in the hoop and then it just rims out. Is that a bad shot? I don't know. Like, the guy has a track record of being a great shooter.
But is he overstretching himself a bit?
I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think, and you know what? Even if he is, for right now, that needs to be okay, because we know this is a guy who, despite calling himself the greatest big man shooter of all time, loves nothing more than to pump fake on a three and drive into a triple team. Like, it is okay to kind of hardwire into him, or at least get him comfortable having a quick trigger on these threes. At some point, if the percentages don't come up, then maybe it becomes a real conversation. But, like, I don't know. I just think he's missing threes. And I think it's, and we always want to assign some reason for it. Oh, it's because he's taking this shot. It's because he's taking that shot. It's because, whatever. I don't know, man. He had a wide open, like, literally a fucking wide open three. Catch and shoot, spot up, top of the key, his money spot at the end of the game. And that was not even close. He wasn't even close on it. I just think he's shooting poorly. I just think he is shooting poorly, and that's it. Like, and if anything, if there's any concern I would have about it, it would be more that this might be lingering effects of the quad that he was dealing with to start the year. Because not only is his 3-point percentage down, his percentages at the rim are down. So I think he might still be playing through that, dealing with it, whatever. And it might be affecting his percentages and at multiple ranges. But yeah, that's where I would kind of go with it. I don't really have an issue with those shots. And I think it's just too soon for me, for a player with his track record of shooting in the NBA, to to get to a place of, well, maybe he's just taking the wrong shots. I think I'm seeing him miss shots that are unequivocally good shots, as far as I'm concerned.
And I'll add to that. I haven't looked up after yesterday, but going into yesterday with Brunson on the floor, he was shooting 37% from three. With him off, he was shooting 32%. Now, some of that might be it's more assisted, but I do wonder if they're more like, look, if Brunson's off and you get an open three in transition, you have a little bit of space, it's going to be tough for us to generate a good look no matter what. So just kind of go for it. I wonder if that's part of the calculus. And Brunson's been out the last couple of games, so maybe that's why the volume of those has gone up a little bit more.
Yeah, it's again 16 game or 14 games. Sorry, it feels like a ton, but I mean, you're more well versed in numbers than me. Like, this is still very much small sample size you're dealing with. What the hell what was Bridges shooting from three like 3 games ago? He was like 48% or something, right? Mikal Bridges for the season now is shooting 40% from three, 40.7% from three. And like, that's how quick things can change when you're dealing with samples this small. I was looking at the numbers yesterday. I think Deuce McBride, I genuinely feel like to start this year that he's been very up and down shooting the ball and hasn't shot the ball that great. He's shooting like 38.5% from three. Like it's just such a small sample that we're dealing with that I would need, honestly, it might be like, if we're 30 games in and Cat is still shooting really badly, then I will be like, okay, maybe there's something to this. But 14 games, I'm still just gonna kind of give him the benefit of the doubt and assume the good shooter will become a good shooter again over the course of time.
Seems like a good bet. Yeah, so I think we're 14 games in, so it's about a sixth of the season. Are you still in wait and see mode? Or we talked about Diawara and some of what we like about what Brown is doing, what we don't like. Has anything changed about your assessment of this team, for good, for bad, since the beginning of the season?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I have not. I don't want to call it there's like and I mean this in a funny way. This is not like but like, every coach has a Josh Hart problem. And what I mean by that is like, and I actually completely sympathize with this because I feel it as I'm watching games too, where Josh Hart will do infuriating stuff, but then he's always capable of making these kind of like momentum plays, 50-50 plays. But more than anything, I don't know. Like, I just mentioned earlier, like when he took out Deuce to put in Shaman, I was like, maybe I would have taken out Hart there. But also at the end of games, I'm kind of like, I want Josh Hart on the floor, I think. Like, there's just something to having it. Like, I understand that push and pull because Hart does seem to have this knack for coming up with big plays and hitting big shots and whatnot. But there are also drawbacks to having him on the floor that become more and more apparent the more he plays. I mean, towards the end of the game, they were running this lineup with him and Mitchell Robinson in the fourth quarter that I thought was just like really bad. I mean, they had no spacing. Brunson couldn't get to the rim. Nobody could get to the rim because of how much they were sagging off Hart. Like they were just in a complete kind of like dogfight, and they were not. It felt like you were trying to win a dogfight instead of, why don't we just try and blow this team? Absolutely blow the doors off this team with a high octane offense. That's what it felt like to me a lot of the nights.
Blow this
in our fourth
team?
quarter.
I don't know if that was what they were trying to do. Were they Bubba? I don't know. So,
but yeah, they it just felt like they could have done that lineup was not working, and Josh Hart was part of that lineup. And even at the end of the game, right? Like there's a possession where they run a pick and roll with Josh Hart and Brunson at the top of the key. We've seen this. We saw this last year all the time with Tibbs. They trap Brunson. He throws a beautiful slip pass into Hart. Hart is a 3-on-4, and he's not sure what to do. And it's like doesn't actually generate. He tries taking a layup, gets blocked. Fortunately, he's able to recover the rebound and then swing it out to Shamet, who hit effectively the game-winning 3 at that point. So when it's really hard, but when I say they're like, if there's another thing that's a little bit disappointing to me with Mike Brown, and this, I want to couch this disappointment with. I also think like if you want your coach to experiment, then you have to let him do things that you are not the biggest fan of. And while I still think that less of Josh Hart is actually much more of Josh Hart, when you don't have OG, maybe you have to lean on him a little bit more. I just think you're maybe leaning on him a little bit more than you need to. And I also would like, I like last night was just a really weird coaching game to me from Mike Brown, because for the majority of the night, they just didn't play 5-out lineups. And I did not understand that at all. I thought it was a really bad decision. I thought it was probably his worst coaching game since he got to New York. So I don't know. Maybe it was just a one-off thing. Maybe he wanted to see something. I don't know. But when I say he has a Josh Hart problem, it's not like I'm saying don't play Josh Hart. It's not like I'm saying Josh Hart is terrible. I just always think less is more with that guy, in the sense that the flaws that we know are inherent to his game matter a lot less when you play him fewer minutes. And I think his defensive focus wanes less when he is on a tighter minute schedule. So, that would probably be my one other maybe disappointment. It's not even a strong word for it, but that's probably the main one. And then I guess tied into this is I will never understand it, but it seems like we're on yet another coach who does not seem to believe that you can play Deuce McBride next to Brunson for large swaths of time. And I don't even want to belabor the point, because I just fundamentally disagree with that, if that is how he feels and how he is operating. It's possible, though, he just thinks that Shamet, and to be fair, Shamet's played great, so who am I to say otherwise? But maybe he just prefers Shamet to Deuce, and that it's as simple as that. But either way, I think if I was going to say a couple things, those would be the other two. And then again, like the Mitch starting thing, I just don't like it. I don't like it. I don't get it. I think it overcomplicates everything.
Don't like that talk.
Yeah, I don't. It's overcomplicating something that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. He's on a minutes limit. He's like, you can't play the guy more than like 22 minutes a night, and even that's usually a stretch. You usually want to keep him to under 20. So you have two centers who you absolutely trust right now, right? You have Mitch and you have Cat. So you have two centers that you trust. You play both them together with the starting lineup, and then you pull Mitch, 3, 4, 5 minutes in, and then Cat goes 5. And now you have to figure out how you run your rotations through the rest of the half to have at least one of those guys on the floor at all times. It's unnecessary. If you just start the game with Cat at the 5, you're going to get a big boost off the bench, because Mitchell Robinson off the bench is a killer. And you're still going to have the ability to play Cat and Mitch together, and you get to do it against bench units, which I think is a much more advantageous situation for them. I think the lack of ball handling when Brunson is off the floor and spacing in general is less of an issue when you do that, when you play those two guys against bench units. And I think the ramifications of starting Mitch Robinson and having to figure out your rotations from there, I think that's part of the reason why there have been some weird minutes things, and in terms of like Yabu and Diawara not finding time, and maybe he doesn't want to play this guy with that. The intentions are good. I do think that it's possible that Cat and Mitch and that starting lineup is their best. It's possible that's their best lineup, right? When OG is back, maybe that's their best lineup. But you don't need to play your best lineup to start games. You just need to play your best lineup as much as you can, really, and in the best situations that you can. And I do not believe that starting Mitch achieves that. So if I'm naming my disappointments so far with Mike Brown, I think those would be the three. But the last one being the one that I think is far more important than anything else, because there's so many downstream effects of that decision throughout the course of a game.
Yeah, and we'll see if and when Mitch's minutes limit gets lifted. I think if you look at
I don't think it's getting lifted. I don't think it's getting lifted.
Ever?
No.
I think if you look at the teams that were most worried about
sorry.
it,
I think in the playoffs. In the playoffs.
So, so you may want to, he may be, if that's what we're concerned about, right? If you play Detroit, I do think our best lineup is double big, especially if they have Stewart. But even if not, I think we saw that last year where Mitch was able to really pummel the glass. And, especially against a team that plays such good defense, you need some of that on, to generate extra possessions where they're just not going to allow a ton of good shots. Against Boston, I would have said I think the 5-out worked, but we saw that Mitch worked well. Against Cleveland, if you play, and Boston's not a factor this year, right? So against Cleveland, they play two bigs to start, right? So it's tough you're asking OG to guard Mobley, you're asking Cat on Allen. I think, a good way to start might be having both those guys out there. And then against Oklahoma City, if they're playing Benedict Hartenstein and Chet, then you probably do want to go double big. So I kind of get it from that standpoint. I would say though, I'm still on the whole I would say pleasantly surprised. I said this team could get the over on 53.5 wins or whatever it was. I thought 60 games was in play. I'm thinking that's unrealistic now. They're 9-5, not exactly blowing the doors off. I think there's been some pretty substantial I think Clarkson over Payne is a pretty big upgrade because you said this yesterday. He's actually can facilitate a little bit more. I don't think Payne was a selfish player, but Payne was the kind of guy who would get in the paint and only one person pays attention because he's either taking a floater or he's kicking out. He was just a very limited player. He made I liked Campaign. He made the best of it. Clarkson has more dynamism to his game. I think that's a big upgrade in itself. You're talking about on top of that, because he can do that, it makes Deuce better because when he plays with Deuce can just hunt shots. I think Mikal Bridges is a much, much better developed or deployed player this year. We already know about Brunson. OG has looked a little bit more comfortable in offense when he's been available. We didn't really have a Yabusele last year. I mean, Precious versus, even with how bad Yabu has been, I'm still much more optimistic on him being an upgrade over Precious. And just the way they're playing. I mean, they've made good on a lot of the talk. At the end of the game yesterday, they devolved back to Brunson ISOs. But that's going to happen sometimes. And that's not that there's a difference between saying we're going to go to Brunson ISOs for the last 2 minutes of a game and saying that's going to be something that happens for most of the game. So I hear the rotational complaints. I think they'll get figured out. I'm not going to be too harsh on that just yet because I've seen him close with Deuce. I think he's already played Deuce more minutes with Brunson than he played all of last year.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So it's not the same level, right? I do actually, on that note, I do think it's just because Shamit is probably impressing him in practice and we're seeing it. Shamit is good. And he has a little more size, so the bias is going to go that way. And I wonder if Deuce is either missing practice because of his issues or, they want to, they're taking it a bit slow with him. We don't know what's going on with Deuce, but, those things play a role. So I'm not too worried about that. Is he going to stick to too big no matter what, too long? That is a concern, right? And especially to your point, if you're not going to be able to play him very heavy minutes, then you're really setting yourself up you're not planning for this, right? But I think he's been pretty transparent about that too, to the point you made earlier, where he's saying I'm still figuring out a lot of this. He's admitted culpability when he's gotten the rotations wrong. I just don't know if he's going to want to start 5-out ever.
And it's worth mentioning, he's from obviously he spent a lot of time in Golden State, even in their best years. Like they very often did not start 5 out. They've often started with double bigs. So
I mean, it was an
and it's like
accident that they started Draymond over David Lee, then, right? So
right.
like,
And that's even like the bigger point, right? It's like it's not just double big. It's like they're not even playing double big with two guys that can shoot half the time. It was like Draymond and Looney. So he
well,
might
now
have
it's a fucking mess, right? So like they're
well
playing Payton
it's
and
so
Butler and Draymond, right?
it
So
it it does seem that like this might just be a general coach thing that like it feels like coaches prefer if they have like options to start to have 5 out and play double big and whatever, that it feels like starting your bigger lineup tends to be the bias around the league in a lot of ways. Um, and then throughout the course of a game, you go to different things. So this might not just be a Mike Brown thing. Like, even Dagnall in OKC, right? They start Chet with Hartenstein. Um, there is a wear and tear to playing the center position that I think you want to avoid putting on guys at times. So, like, if you're like, well, I want to have the cat 5 out option to close games with, but I also know that when I do that, I'm going to be putting more of a load on him, um, to carry on both ends of the floor. Well, then I want to kind of save him a little bit than at the start of games. So there's a lot that goes into it, but yeah, I'm not like out on that lineup or something like that. I worry about the downstream effects of starting him, how it affects how you manage your rotations the rest of the game. And quite frankly, like if he's a 20-minute a night guy, like then just bring him off the bench because it feels like unnecessarily complicated to start him if he's on such a limitation, which seems to be very evidently the case.
yeah, it's
I
definitely
think this is
a
also a good point from Akiva. Deuce's lack of handle as a guard is also an issue. I don't the point you're making, Akiva, is actually correct. I will say, like, I actually think Deuce's handle is pretty good. He just can't leverage it into anything. Like, he's just not comfortable when he like there was a play yesterday where he gets into the paint, but like before he actually touches the paint and commits a defender, he has swung it out to somebody. I think it was Bridges, and no advantage was created. And it's like you gotta have that comfort level of like, okay, I think Deuce can beat the first line of defense now, definitely more consistently than he could when he first came in the league. But then does he leverage that into anything? And too often the answer is no. And so, like, okay, so you have this thing now that you can do, but what is it actually opening up? And if it doesn't actually open up anything, then it's just kind of like cool. Like it's cool you can do that, but who cares really? Like you're not dynamic at finishing at the rim. Although he had probably maybe like one of the best finishes of his fucking career yesterday over Lively or around Lively, I should say. Um, but he doesn't leverage that initial kind of advantage, maybe that he is giving himself the potential to create enough for it to matter. So yeah, I think this is the fair point where Deuce's just lack of ability to really be much of a creator on the ball is a limitation, and that can be part of the issue as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would have agreed with this statement verbatim most of the last couple of years. Because I think like one thing you used to see from Deuce a lot is he puts his head down. So that to me tells you it is a handle issue because if you put your head down, even and everyone puts their head down, right? Brunson puts his head down when he drive, but when you're facing defender or you're not like committed, most players, most point guards can keep their head up. I used to see Deuce just put his head down immediately or turn his back. I see it less this year. I see him probing. I see him keeping his head up. What I think that you're getting at a little bit is he's a big fucking guy, right? This was a football player. He was a quarterback, but he's a very physical defender. I rarely see him use that physicality on offense. He practices with a guy who's excellent at it, who I think Deuce is probably stronger than. But you rarely see him put his body into a guy. You rarely see him like use his shoulder, create space, dislodge guys. That to me is what's missing. So And even when he gets a step, for whatever reason, I don't think he's shy. It's not like a Bridges thing where he's just shying away from contact. I just don't think he's comfortable with it. So he'll leave promising drives. He'll step back, whatever, or settle for a jumper. When use your body, and I think that's something I've wanted him to do since the draft. There was one reason I was high on him on the draft. I was like, he doesn't use his body. At West Virginia, he was playing with two bigs. So to me, I was always like he doesn't get a lot of rim attempts. The two bigs doesn't help. But I think like getting him to get into a guy's chest a little bit, and then that opens up the midi game, right? And if they're overplaying that, you draw fouls. He's a good free throw shooter. So I would say to me, it's the physicality that I would have agreed on the handle point before. I think the handle has actually improved quite a bit. The burst is enough. He's just not using his physicality enough on offense. Obviously, on defense, he's very good at it.
Yeah. I think that's probably fair. And look, I'll be completely honest. I like Deuce a ton. I thought he should have played more last year. We've all gone over that 500,000 times. I don't think he's had the best start to this year. Not since actually
he's something off the court. Right?
Yeah, the start of the year was really good. Actually, the first couple of games that he played were really good, and then whatever was going on, then he left the team for a couple of games with personal issues. Then he was questionable for the Miami game last week, or was it on Monday? For personal issues, he ended up playing. So I don't know. Maybe something's going on with him off the floor, like you mentioned. Maybe it's affecting his practice time or something. So it doesn't really matter what. I mean, it does matter what's going on with him, but it's also important to be like, if I'm trying to set some standard of like, I will be rewarding guys for playing well, then I'm cool with rewarding Landry Shamet, because he has played really well. And he had like maybe the poor performance of the season for the Knicks a week ago on Friday against Miami. It's okay to reward that. And obviously when you reward somebody, it has to come at another player's expense in a lot of situations. If that's Deuce right now, so be it. But as I'll say, seasons are long. Role players' performance fluctuates quite often. I think there will be a stretch of the season where Landry Shamet's struggling and Deuce has it going, and then maybe that shifts a little bit too. So it's fine. Like, I think it's fine for right now, even if I have some reservations about it. We'll see how it develops over the course of the season. And, it's really as simple as that. I did want to talk about Mikal Bridges. He's, I believe, second in the league now in stocks per game. His shot has been he's definitely cooled off from three, from where he was to start the year. I think he is again in one of his little I don't want to attack the rim with force modes right now. He had a couple of opportunities yesterday, I thought, to get to the rim where he settled for a mid-range jumper instead. Fortunately, his mid-range jumper was going yesterday. So I would, but I think the difference between what is happening with him now and what was happening with him last year is when he wasn't scoring well last year, you just really did not feel like he was involved or impacting the game. And, his defense still has its ups or downs, but he's definitely benefited from not having to defend or not being tasked with defending the point of attack every possession, every game, all the time. He's playing with more confidence. But also, I think because of how he's being used defensively, where he's off the ball more and he's kind of covering the gaps more, you're seeing him impact the game more as a help defender. The steals are up, the blocks are up. He had 5 yesterday combined, right? I think it was 3 steals and 2 blocks. He's just contributing in so many ways. And it's worth mentioning, like, he's averaging, I believe, 4.8 assists per game. He led the team last night in assists. think he's second in the team in assists per game. He's second in the team in time of possession per game. He's second in the team in touches per game. His usage is down, but like his involvement is way up. I really like how he's playing, and I think it's a good sign that even in this little stretch where it feels like he's lost a little confidence in the three ball again, maybe not getting to the rim as much as he did to start the year, that he's still finding ways to impact the game, um, and and positively contribute. Uh, so yeah, I just wanted to. I thought he's worth giving a shout out to, and I know he's had some weird kind of yips in these last few games in the fourth quarter, but he did come up with a big three last night when they needed it. So hopefully that's nothing more than just a little minor blip here. But he's played really well, and again, if we're going to criticize Mike Brown for a variety of different things, he does deserve credit for getting more out of Mikal Bridges so far this season because whether it was said or not, whether it was open or not, it was pretty clear to me that part of the reason that they made a coaching change was they felt that Tom Thibodeau was not getting enough out of Mikal Bridges, among others. And when you make the investment they did in getting Mikal Bridges and signing to an extension, you want that to be more of a priority and a focus for your coach. And he so far the early returns are good on that account.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been the most encouraging part of the season. I think we know what we're going to get from Brunson. We're pretty confident what we're going to get from Cat. OG has been pretty much the same player since we got him, really helpful. This was the inflection point, and this was the biggest bet they made, right? 5 picks. Like, you can argue with the Cat salary, that's its own big bet, but it's not just about the picks. It's about, as I would imagine, besides maybe the last one, all those picks will be in the 20s. You're not probably getting a superstar with those. We saw what happened last year, by the way, right? Like, Brooklyn had 5,000 first-round picks. They're sending Danny Wolf to the G League. They're talking themselves into Igor Demon. Like, you see, like, how it doesn't matter. But what it does is it compromises the Knicks' flexibility, right? So you're making a big bet on this guy, fairly or unfairly, right? Like, there are people who are talking about, if you had 5 picks, it'd be kind of nice if Giannis was going to be available. But he's been everything that you would have hoped. He's only averaging 16 points a game, but he's averaging almost 5 assists to 1 turnover. The playmaking, I think even Prez has been surprised by this. I think we mentioned this, right? Prez in Dallas last year, I was talking with them. It's like, well, does Bridges actually suck as a passer, or is it the Tibbs system? And even they were saying, like, maybe it is. He's able to do more than we thought, and he's only averaging 1 turnover a game. I've really been impressed with his willingness to go to the rim. I mean, like, you remember, I don't know if it was Boston or Indiana. Do you remember that one where he catches in transition?
Indiana.
Yeah, and then he like fades away with, it wasn't even Turner or something. It was like a guard. It was Matherin, I think, at the rim, and he fades away. That's gone. I haven't seen that. He took 1 fadeaway yesterday, which was the right decision. It was a little early in the shot clock for it, but in rhythm, the way he's been playing, like, you earn those. So he's been living off of the mid-range. He's been pretty aggressive taking from 3, doing a good job moving the ball and moving without the ball. And yeah, I love his, like, even when he's not getting to the rim, he's doing a good job of drawing contact, right? He had one where he's driving to the rim and he gets rerouted, but it's with a hip check. So he's like, I'll take that. How much of that is more comfort? How much of that is he got paid, so he's maybe less worried a little bit about getting banged up here or there? I don't know. But this is the guy you can envision being the 3rd option, and sometimes the 2nd option as a creator. So Bridges has, and yeah, like, to your point, now that they're playing Shamet at the point of attack or Deuce, when he's off ball, you see, I said this yesterday, it's like, last year, it was like you were playing, maybe this isn't the best example because Ed Reed is physical and probably could play press corner, but it's like you're playing Ed Reed at press corner where, if he's constantly working through
maybe Palomalu. Maybe Palomalu is better.
It's he's not you're not maximizing his skill set, right? Whereas when he's in the passing lanes, and he can read and react. That's what he's really. That goes back to Nova. That was his real strength.
It's like playing Cooper DeJean out on the boundary instead of at nickel.
I want them to do that, so that's actually not a good example because Adoree Jackson is the worst player in the history of fucking mankind. So I think that he's just he's just utilized better on both sides. Now, how much of that is maybe if we had Landry healthy last year, that would have happened more, right? I don't know, and he's just more comfortable, and so it's a mix of things. I don't want to put it all on Tibbs, but in terms of what I was talking about, right? Like how am I evaluating this team versus last year? Or versus my expectations at the beginning of the year, Bridges is the top of the list as the most encouraging thing. Jordan Clarkson actually might be number 2. And that we're going to need it. And I think as the competition level increases, we're going to see, how does he adapt and all that. But so far, a lot to be happy about.
One thing I will just add to what you're talking about. I mentioned this to Prez last year. I don't remember if it was on a pod or just in the course of conversation. But what always stood out to me with Bridges is when you put him in pick and roll situations as a ball handler, I always felt like that he didn't see the floor well. He does not pass well out of those situations. I think he often just ends up putting up a mid-range jumper or he record scratches a possession, but he's not really creating. I don't think he doesn't see the floor. He doesn't necessarily see the advantages that he's created, the passing opportunities he's created when he does bend a defense. But when he catches the ball on the move, whether it be a baseline cut, grab and go from the top of the key, or anything of the things of that are in transition, for whatever reason, it always felt like he could suddenly see the floor, maybe map the floor out clearer. Maybe it's because he's not on the ball and he's able to observe the floor before he catches it. And he just has a greater understanding of where everything is. Maybe that's what really unlocks it. But which is to say, like, we know that those type of cutting opportunities and the movement in general was not at the level it is in, what Mike Brown wants to get done here. And it's not that surprising to me that he is a beneficiary of that. Or I guess I should say it's not all too surprising that he's a beneficiary of that, because I did have that feeling about him last year that, we knew he was not a selfish player, but it was always weird, right? Where you're like, it's weird. Like, I don't feel like he's a ball hog or anything, but it also feels like he should maybe get more assists than he does. So I do think that assist number growing is a result of kind of just the general play style. But either way, it's good to see, and you definitely want it. You also mentioned Jordan Clarkson. One thing I want to say about him that I'm like very impressed by right now, he is posting the lowest turnover percentage of his career. It's a 9.0 turnover percentage on Basketball Reference. His assist rate is also a career low, actually, funny enough. It's at 12.6%. But I think anybody that's watched these games so far, it's hard to not feel positive about how he's playing. One, because he's making shots. But two, he doesn't look washed anymore. And then three, it's very obvious that he's not just chucking. He's on a career low usage this year so far, which I find interesting. He is. It feels like he understands the team that he's on. He understands that he's playing with more talented players, more skilled players, a team that has real expectations, unlike whatever the fuck's going on in Utah, which is just like some kind of Mormon Ponzi scheme that Danny Ainge is running. So yeah, like I'm impressed by what he's showing. I am impressed that he has dialed it back, right? Because yes, I think over the offseason, one of the things that always stood out to me when I was kind of just watching some of his games and then looking at the numbers is that he is actually a pretty willing passer on drives. Like he's a turnover prone player, but he's not an unwilling passer. Yet he has this real kind of widespread reputation, maybe deservedly so, if you ask Mike Breen after that game at the Garden last year, of being a unscrupulous chucker. Not there's never been a shot that he passes up that he's not happy to take. But he hasn't played like that in New York, really. Like there are some shots that are questionable, but I would say that's few and far between right now. He's really limited the bozo shots, the forced up shots. It does seem that some of that probably in preseason was an attempt on his part to kind of get himself back to game speed, play himself back into shape, get into a rhythm. But yeah, what he's giving them right now is good. And look, you're gonna have to live with some of the defensive issues. We saw that at the end of the first half, where he gets back cut at the very end off of after they make a three. But yeah, he's been really good, and they needed somebody that could give them some points in bunches off the bench. He's giving you that, and he's giving you that while also not constantly jacking up bullshit. And that is a big deal for the Knicks, I think, because he is, Campaign gave us a good year last year, all things considered, but Jordan Clarkson so far looks like the type of upgrade that they were hoping for, and now that they're getting.
Yeah, this is a weird analogy, but I'd say like with Payne, if you think about a gadget slot receiver, right? So like you're using him on end arounds or like kind of these quick pitches or like the gadget plays, right? They're useful. They could stretch a defense, and sometimes, especially if you need that, right? If you're substituting in your backup running backs in, it can help loosen up the defense. That's how I'd call Payne, right? Where like he can get you buckets on a defense on a bench unit that just lacks perimeter scoring, right? He can pull up from three. He can get to his floater range. But he just it had like I don't think he was a selfish player, but I rarely saw him draw a double. That wasn't his fault, right? It's just people are not scared. They're go take the floater, right? People are not scared of Campaign. Whereas Clarkson in that analogy is more like a true slot, right? Where when he gets into the paint, he will draw a center. He can make some of those passes off of that, right? When he's pulling up for three, it's not that long release. It is more of a fluid motion. He has that real off the dribble ability more than Payne, who needs that room a little bit more, right? And he can play off ball a little bit, which Payne could too. So I'm not going to knock him on that. But he looks like a real backup guard, which frankly the Knicks haven't really had. They haven't really had a backup point guard, right? Deuce has his limitations. They haven't had one since Quickly left, really. A guy who could do all the things. So, and it helps Deuce because Deuce now doesn't have to worry about that stuff. It helps a guy like Cat or Bridges, who's babysitting the bench, avoid turnovers. And Clarkson can still play off of them. I think his effort on defense has been really good. I think that's what you'd hope for. I think that after preseason, especially, you talk about getting kind of the stink of playing in a losing culture off. I think Clarkson has adapted pretty quickly to that. And he's a pro's pro. That we don't talk about it like these guys, but even Payne, this applies, right? If you've been in the league 12, 13, or whatever, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years, generally they're low maintenance guys who are going to stick to their role. And Clarkson isn't a guy who's been particularly loud off the court or made a lot of noise. I don't think he ever complained about his role in Utah. I know that's the kind of guy you want in that role, and it's a big upgrade there. And I think Yabu is going to end up being a big upgrade on Precious. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Precious is starting basketball games, pal. Okay.
Precious is not in this version of the universe. In this version of Middle Earth, Precious is not going to be synonymous with a ring. So
Yeah, no, I think that with Yabu, obviously we got to see it more. He hasn't had the type of games yet that Clarkson has had for them. I thought Clarkson was like that game on Friday. Obviously, Cat goes off in the first half. Shamit's great in the second. I thought Clarkson played really well in that game. He did a good job, I thought, at times of slowing them down when it was appropriate to do so. He gave them a good amount of shot creation. He's able to get into the paint. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like they haven't had, and like you mentioned, since Quickly left, they don't really have anybody they haven't had anybody that consistently gets into the paint.
Other than the Brunson,
and not just gets into the paint, but it does something productive once they get into the paint. It's not always clean with him right now. It still feels like he doesn't fully trust his level of burst. Like there are times where I think he has an angle and he just doesn't necessarily go for it. So he'll start like pivoting in the paint or trying to kind of Nash dribble out. But there's enough. I've seen already from him plenty of times where he gets in the paint and then is able to get to the baseline and then kick out to the corner. Like you're already seeing those type of things from him that they didn't really have anybody that could do last year other than Brunson and really needed. So I'm very satisfied with what we're getting out of him so far. Again, like honestly, there's a lot of like what the Knicks. It feels choppy. It has felt choppy all year. And like I said, I think they've kind of had a choppy year with just, they come to training camp and Yabu's out of shape. And then it's like, okay, Josh Hart is out. And then Mitchell Robinson is out. And then, Josh Hart comes back, but then Deuce goes out. And then Mitch Robinson comes back. But then, whatever. Brunson gets hurt or OG gets hurt. It's like they haven't had a stretch. And there are teams that have it worse than the Knicks with injuries. We played with them last night. So I'm not trying to sing a sob story for us. But, it's just worth mentioning why, 14 games is early. They've got guys that are figuring stuff out. We know Clarkson didn't even play at the end of last year. He had to get surgery, if I remember correctly. So there's guys that are dealing with different things. We have not seen the best version of this team yet. We also, when they've been fully healthy, they did go on a stretch at home where they were just blitzing the shit out of teams. It's worth mentioning that. I think it's easy in the kind of churn of a regular season to lose sight of broad trends and stretches that we saw. I've seen a proof of concept. I believe in this roster. I think all their goals are still ahead of them. I have not moved off of my prediction that they will win the East. I think they will win the East, but they have a lot of stuff to clean up. I think their gap help is well intentioned, but not well executed. They have their weak side rotations are constantly way too aggressive, leaving open corner shooters on the weak side, wing shooters on the weak side. There's real strange moments of overhelping from one pass away, which give up open threes. Like they got to clean that stuff up. Mike Brown has to be better with his rotations, more consistent in some ways, and not consistent. And what I mean by that is I don't mind if you're going to experiment different stuff. I do think it's a little bit weird when he puts in a guy for a minute or 2 minutes and then they get pulled. I don't really know what that does for you. So we'll see if that changes over the course of the year. As I mentioned earlier, I do think some of that with Yabu is just about what maybe medical is advising is best for him at this moment in time. But yeah, I feel good about overall where this team is at, even after kind of a stinker of a game yesterday. But it's why was it a stinker, right? Okay, well, why? I hate to be the guy, but it's they missed a bunch of open threes. They missed a bunch of fucking free throws, which was nuts. They blew they missed 5 free throws in the last minute of the game. Brunson missed 1. Shamet misses 2. Mitchell Robinson missing 2 is not exactly earth-shattering. But the other 2 guys going 1 for 4 is, you would never expect that. They did everything they could to lose that game, and they were able to still pull it out, which is a good sign. But yeah, I feel good. I still am not certain I'm not certain that this is the final version of this team this year. I think that I'm not guaranteeing anything. I don't know anything. I just something tells me that they're going to make a swing in the season, and I don't know what it is. And maybe I'll be wrong, but it feels like something might happen. I don't know. That's just how I
Have you
kinda
have you seen
read
the Knicks
how
play any teams recently who may be looking to fire sale? Like maybe in the last day or so, with players that were appealing.
Yeah, I mean, I know like Max Christie had a kind of quiet game yesterday, but he's somebody I would like. Najee Marshall did not have a quiet game yesterday. Had a great game yesterday. He's somebody I would look into. Like,
I also don't want
but
D'Lo. I've seen people mention D'Lo for all the reasons
oh
I
my
like
god,
Clarkson. Just no, I'm good with Clarkson. D'Lo might be better. Who cares? Like,
I don't know that every team that has D'Lo doesn't want him. It should tell you something at a certain point. And this is not like a Landry Shamet situation where it's just like, oh, this guy's bouncing around the league or whatever. Like it's like every team he goes to, there's always reports of like, oh, everybody hates him, and it's like, what? That happened again already? Like, you can take
snitches get stitches, bro.
you can take the Buckeye out of Ohio State, but you can't take the Ohio State out of the Buckeye. But yeah, I think yeah, you're right. I would not do the D'Lo thing, but even with the Najee Marshall thing, it's like, look, I like Najee Marshall a lot. Is some of that though that like I watch him kill the Knicks from three. It seems like every year, but then I look at his percentages for the year, and it's like, oh, he's like 33%, and it's not on high volume. Um, Max Christie is having a really great shooting year. I think he's the number one corner shooter in the league so far this season. Is he actually an upgrade, or am I kind of wanting him to be an upgrade? I don't know. And also to go back to the Marshall thing, this is also why I just want to see Diawara play. Because really the thing I think we need more than anything is one more big wing defender. Maybe, is it possible that the guy that we want is already on the roster and that's him? And is it possible that if Yabu gets his shit together, that him being able to play the four kind of helps bridge that gap too? It is possible. It's possible that we have everything we need on this team right now. I just don't know it yet, obviously. And 14 games in, you're never gonna really know it. Like you're not gonna know it in most situations 14 games in. But they have a big test. They have a big test ahead of them here. I think this Orlando game on Saturday is a good. I'm not gonna call it a gut check game, but it is a good like. This team embarrassed you, quite frankly, last week. How do you respond? And yeah, I know you don't have OG, so maybe it's a harder task, but it's got to find a way.
What are you prepared to do about it?
Really?
Don't let somebody come into your house, take your food.
Yeah, but they have to they've got to respond. We know that Cat was not good in that game. I mean, nobody was really good in that game. Even Brunson, I know that he put up numbers towards the end, but I didn't think he had a very particularly strong game. Yabusele, weirdly enough, was probably one of their better players that night. Yeah, they've got to be able to match the physicality Orlando's going to exhibit before. So. Yeah, but then they're going to have to they're going to have to figure out how to match up with this team, and punch back, right? Like this is a team that hits you. Like, let's see how you respond. I'm very, very interested to watch this game. I don't know. Did you have any?
Last time, did we?
We did have Mitch last time. He didn't play against Memphis, but Mitch, I don't know. He's a little bit in a little of a downslope right now. I'm sure he'll be fine, but
yeah, I think that's an opportunity area because Wendell Carter Jr. always has good games against us, but their bigs can be had, I think, on the glass. They've been playing a lot more zone. I would go to that more. I don't remember how much zone we played against Orlando, but I'll buy Anthony Black shooting like Steph Curry again when I see it. And I think a zone is perfect against a guy like Paolo or against a guy like Franz. Is Paolo supposed to play? I don't know if he's back or what, but obviously got hurt last time. But against those bigs, yeah, like have them running into the paint against the packed paint, make them kick it out. I still really like if Brunson's healthy, I still don't think they can really slow him down. It's just about executing, and they just got to hit shots. Like, I think that's been most of the games they've lost. That's really what it's come down to. They just missed open shots.
Yeah, I mean, this is the nature of 3-point shooting. So, look, they survived a game yesterday that, on paper, obviously, huge mismatch. Nick should have run away with it. But you get into a game, nobody can buy a shot in the first half. I think they ended up shooting 29% from three for the game. But they just couldn't make shots.
Too.
Yeah, 15, actually. But yeah, I mean, when that happens, like, you're going to you're putting yourself in jeopardy against any professional team when you shoot like that. And all you can hope for is that they're able to hopefully they get the rub of the green against Orlando on Saturday in those moments. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Stacey, anything that you'd like to plug before we get out of here?
Nothing to plug. No, just all the great work at the Strickland.
Awesome. I have nothing to plug personally. I will also plug all the work at the Strickland. I will plug this podcast. And yeah, that's it. All right. Next play Saturday against Orlando should be a good one. It's a weird tip, 5 p.m. tip. So yeah, see how it goes. All right. Thank you to everybody for the comments. Thank you for the super chats. Appreciate your time. Thank you to our sponsor, FanDuel. That is our show for today. Hope everybody enjoyed it. And me and Prez should also be dropping a pod tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Peace.